The original Fable game sat on my shelf for about 2 years before I ever actually played it. My parents had bought my brother and I one of those Crystal Edition Xboxes, shout to mom and dad, along with Halo 2, Crimson Skies, and Fable, which had come bundled with the console. We weren't really diverse in our gaming choices at the time, and since all of our friends were playing Halo 2, so were we. The Master Chief stayed in the disc tray as if it was a cryopod for the better part of 2 years, and every so often we would goof around with the multiplayer on Crimson Skies, which is a freaking awesome game by the way, or NHL 2K5. It wasn't until we had teabagged a number of players equal to that of a small nation that we started to grow a little weary of Halo 2, and it was then that Fable had its chance to shine. The time it took to become my favorite Xbox game was far shorter than the time it had spent sitting on that shelf, waiting to blow my idiot mind. From then on, mainline Fable releases would be some of my most anticipated titles, and to this day, some of my most played games. Over the years, the series has hit some angelic high notes, and some notes you'll likely find lurking somewhere in the Mariana Trench, ending with the cancellation of Fable Legends and the shuttering of Lionhead Studios back in 2016. But now, Fable is finally confirmed to be coming back with a new developer for a new generation, and since I'm staying home most days to avoid the slowly encroaching end times, I thought I might as well chime in on what my hopes are for the next chapter of the Fable series. This is the first episode of Zero's Guild Gaming. If it's not funny, it's not Fable. Now, since the recently released cinematic teaser at the Xbox Game Show featured this, I'd say we're probably going to be fine in this regard. It is nice to know that a UK-based game dev, Playground Games, is taking care of this one. Hopefully they're able to capture the quirky charm and humor that made inhabiting Albion such a joy. The humor is one of the many things that set the series apart, and one of the reasons I love it so much is that it strikes such a different tone from pretty much everything else out there. Not only was the humor built into the writing, but it was also built into the game mechanics themselves, especially so with the expression system and how NPCs would react to what you do. I'm hoping that the next Fable game brings the laughs. Fable 3 was a flawed game in many respects, but one of the worst aspects of it was it kind of lost its RPG roots somewhere along the way. The road to rule just sucked. For those unaware, the last mainline Fable entry, Fable 3, abandoned the fairly straightforward leveling system in favor of the road to rule. It was a leveling system of sorts, just super convoluted. You earned guild seals instead of experience points, and instead of opening up a menu with detailed descriptions of what you were getting or upgrading, you would walk along this bleak road, opening up treasure chests once you had enough guild seals. Not only did the chest contain new moves and upgrades, but also expressions and even customization options. It was a complicated mess, and while I appreciate the devs were trying something new with the leveling system and menus in the game, it just didn't work. To make matters worse, what it replaced wasn't even broken. In my opinion, the first Fable game had the best leveling system in terms of straightforwardness, and while Fable 2 kept things generally the same, the variety of possibilities were still greater in the first game. I'm not saying that Playground's Fable should straight up copy Lionhead's Fable leveling system. I think they should put their own stamp on it, but I would love it if they at least used that system as a baseline. Villains in the Fable series have been a combination of hits and misses, but let's be honest, they're mostly misses. Some spoilers from here on in, for those who haven't played the series and may be looking to get into it. Jack of Blades had an awesome visual design, and I definitely have a soft spot for him, but in the context of the game, his history, goals, and motivations aren't really explained all that well without reading books and additional lore you find lying around the game world. Then, in the expansion, after you've defeated him once, he comes back to antagonize you a little more. It does offer a little context about the nature of Jack of Blades, which is nice, but then when he comes back again, he's a dragon for some reason. It was weird. Fable 2's villain, Lucien, was probably the worst of the bunch. You get some context this time. Rich noble, dead wife and kid, and based on his arc through the rest of the game, he lacks any ability to cope with that loss in any way resembling healthy. But as a villain, you barely ever see or hear from him. He just kind of exists in the background while you use the vulgar thrust expression in Bowerstone Square and build a real estate empire. Then at the end of the game, you don't even get to fight him. You just shoot him once. And if you listen to him monologue long enough, you're not even the one to pull the trigger. A terrible villain for the series' best game. Fable 3 showed a definite improvement in this area, but then kind of blew it. In-game, your brother, Logan, the King of Albion, is who you fight against. He's clearly a despotic, tyrannical leader who needs to be taken down. Like Lucian, he does just kind of exist in the background for lots of the time, but the payoff near the end-ish of the game is the context you get for his actions. On your adventures to raise an army and take the throne for yourself, you come across a new threat. Well, it's new to you anyway. When you finally do take the throne, you learn that your brother was acting like such a dick because he'd also encountered that same threat years earlier and knew they were coming to wreak havoc on Albion. He says he was acting tyrannically because he was trying to save money for an army to fight it. I usually end up killing him anyway because how useless do you need to be to not do the obvious thing? Buy all the houses, wait a few days, and swim around in your giant pile of landlord gold. It's easy stuff, Logan. Really, really easy stuff. Where Fable 3 falters on the villain is that secondary threat I hinted at earlier. A massive, supernatural army ready to consume everything called the Darkness. Just the Darkness. Makes things dark, I think. They never really say. I hope the next villain is someone with clear goals and clear motivations for wanting to achieve them. I hope all of this is shown to the player, not told to them. Make this person a clear threat to the land. Make the villain someone the player can hate and rally against, or maybe even love and idolize. Or perhaps make it someone you think could be doing a much better job of being a villain, which brings me to my next point. This is one that fans of the series have been wanting forever. The Fable games are famous for letting the player act like a paragon of goodness, an icon of evil, or just doing whatever they feel like doing at the time. This was great and added so much replay value to the series. Despite this though, the stories never really changed based on your actions. The path to get there changed sometimes, but in the end, you'd always defeat Jack, or Lucian, or Logan, or the Darkness. I think it's time the series took its next logical step in this regard and let the player join the villain, either to serve them or usurp them and wreak havoc on the land. It would even be an amazing option to defeat the villain by gaining their trust, then double-crossing them to eliminate them and their organization to save the world. In the end, you would have done the heroic thing, but perhaps at the cost of your own reputation in the wider world, on account of all the terrible stuff you had to do to get into the inner circle. It would be great if the options players had to interact with the story were more varied and led to different endings. Let the players craft their own fable, as it were. Bring it back. Just, please. Bring it back. You could do so much with it. Do the right thing. Bring it back. I'll keep this one pretty short. It would be nice if the weapons you collect on your journey had some more unique animations than they have in the past. Now, don't get me wrong, there were some awesome looking weapons and spells all throughout the series, but the way they control never really differentiated ways to approach combat. A rusty iron longsword and a master longsword feel the exact same to use, so does a rusty hammer and a legendary great axe. Games like Dark Souls, don't worry, I don't want Fable to be like Souls, but they have weapons that feel different to use and have different movesets to keep things interesting for the player and to give them options. It would be nice to see Fable do the same, given how many weapons there are to find. Lastly, and I think this may be a pipe dream on my part, is that I actually don't want this game to be an open world. The series has been structured around regions in the past, and I hope this continues. The market is extremely saturated with open worlds, and so many of them turn into these tedious and uninteresting slogs. Now, not all of them are this way, of course. There are some incredible open worlds out there, but for Fable, I hope they stay the course with more tailored regions with their own unique quirks, aesthetics, secrets, and characters. Playground could still develop some very large and diverse regions to explore, but Fable's strengths were never the size of its worlds. It was what you could do within them that made these games so special. So, those are my hopes for the next Fable, and if you're still here, thank you so much for giving me your time. This is my first YouTube video, so sorry if that shows a bit. Just know that I'm hoping to improve my videos and grow the channel. It won't just be Fable content either, but I'll definitely keep covering the game as news comes out. I can't promise a regular release schedule as I still have a full-time job and a baby on the way, but if things go well enough, you never know. So if you want to become a member of the Zeros Guild, feel free to subscribe. It's great. You'll even get to keep your family.